Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Phyllis Summers had been underestimated before. That was the mistake people in Genoa City kept making. They thought she was impulsive, emotional, reckless. They whispered that she burned bridges faster than she built them. They called her unstable when she fought back and manipulative when she played smart. But what they never seemed to understand was this: Phyllis didn't lash out randomly. She calculated. And this time, her revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be surgical. The war had started quietly inside the walls of Newman Enterprises. Victoria Newman had outmaneuvered her in the boardroom, freezing accounts and painting her as a liability. Investors had grown nervous. Allies had stepped back. Even Daniel had started asking careful questions. That hurt more than anything. But if Victoria thought she had won, she didn't know Phyllis at all. Phyllis stood alone in her suite at the Grand Phoenix, staring at the city skyline. Genoa City glittered beneath her, unaware that its foundation was about to shift. "They think I'm done," she murmured. Her phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message confirming that the first phase had been set in motion. Phyllis smiled slowly. Across town at the Newman Ranch, Victoria poured herself a drink. She felt steady, controlled. She had weathered Phyllis' last outburst and emerged stronger. The board was backing her. Nikki was relieved. The company stock had stabilized. She overplayed her hand, Victoria told her mother confidently. Nikki studied her daughter carefully. Phyllis doesn't give up that easily. Victoria exhaled, then she'll learn. But even as she spoke, a ripple was already forming beneath the surface. The next morning, a financial report hit the media, one that revealed a dormant subsidiary under Newman Enterprises had quietly accumulated staggering losses over the past year, losses that had been masked under a restructuring plan. The report was detailed. Precise. Devastating. Victoria stormed into the executive office as phones rang off the hook. "Who leaked this?" she demanded. Her legal team scrambled. "It appears to have come from an internal audit file." Victoria's jaw tightened. That file had been locked. Someone had accessed it. Meanwhile, Phyllis sat calmly at Crimson Lights, stirring her coffee while Sharon watched her with wary curiosity. "You look pleased," Sharon said carefully. Phyllis tilted her head. "Should I not be? Whenever you look that calm, something happenings." Phyllis leaned back, unfazed. "Let's just say I'm tired of being treated like the villain in someone else's story." Sharon narrowed her eyes. "What did you do?" Phyllis smiled faintly. "Nothing illegal." Daniel joined her later, his expression tense. "Mom, did you release those numbers?" Phyllis didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked, "Do you believe they deserve to be hidden?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "That's not the point. This could cause panic." "Good," she replied softly. He stared at her. "You're trying to hurt Victoria." "I'm trying to remind her she doesn't get to humiliate me and walk away." At Newman Enterprises, investors began calling emergency meetings. Questions flew. The board demanded clarity. Victoria stood at the center of the storm, refusing to show fear. But inside, she knew. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. As she whispered to herself, "Phyllis." That night, Victoria confronted her directly. They met in the dimly lit boardroom where their rivalry had escalated weeks before. "You leaked it," Victoria said flatly. Phyllis didn't blink. "If I had, I'd say you're welcome. Transparency is good for business." "You're destabilizing the company." "I'm exposing weakness." Victoria stepped closer. "This is revenge." Phyllis's eyes flashed. "No, this is balance." Victoria's voice lowered. "You're playing a dangerous game." Phyllis smiled faintly. "I'm not playing anymore." But even as she stood there, victorious in the moment, another move had already been made. Because Phyllis' ultimate revenge wasn't just about Victoria. It was about the entire Newman legacy. Over the next few days, whispers spread that a rival conglomerate had quietly begun acquiring shares in Newman Enterprises. Small purchases at first, then larger blocks. No one knew who was behind it. Until the name surfaced. A shell corporation traced back to an offshore account. And behind that account, a connection to someone long thought neutral in this war. "Phyllis." Daniel stared at her in disbelief when he saw the report. "You're buying Newman shares." Not just buying, she corrected calmly, positioning. You could trigger a hostile takeover or force accountability. Victoria felt the ground shift beneath her for the first time. This wasn't just damage control anymore. This was a siege. And Phyllis was patient, calculated, relentless. The board called an emergency vote to strengthen internal protections. Lawyers worked overnight. Nikki urged caution. Victoria, she warned, if this escalates further, it could tear the company apart. Victoria's gaze hardened, then we fight. But she couldn't ignore the truth. Phyllis had anticipated every move. And Genoa City was beginning to tremble. The tipping point came when the stock price dipped sharply on a Monday morning. Panic rippled through investors. Media outlets swarmed the Newman building. Headlines screamed about instability and power struggles. Victoria held a press conference projecting confidence. We remain in full control, she assured cameras. Rumors of takeover attempts are exaggerated. But behind closed doors, the numbers told a different story. Philly's silent accumulation of shares had given her leverage. Not majority control, but influence. And influence was power. Daniel confronted her again that night. You said you wanted justice. This feels bigger than that. Phyllis met his eyes. It is. You're trying to dismantle the Newmans. No, she whispered, I'm forcing them to evolve. Daniel shook his head. At what cost? Phyllis faltered for a moment. Images flashed through her mind, broken relationships, burned bridges, past regrets. Then she steadied herself. At the cost of complacency. Meanwhile, Victoria made a bold move of her own. She approached an unlikely ally, Billy Abbott. Billy had his own complicated history with both women, but he understood corporate warfare better than most. You want my help? Billy asked skeptically. Victoria nodded. Phyllis is turning this into something bigger than revenge. If she gains more ground, the ripple effect will hit Abbott too. Billy smirked. And what do I get? Stability, Victoria replied, and leverage. Billy considered it. And just like that, the battlefield expanded. Phyllis sensed the alliance forming. She wasn't surprised. Good. The bigger the fight, the clearer the truth would become. But then something unexpected happened. An internal audit uncovered a miscalculation in the original loss report, one that suggested the subsidiary losses weren't as catastrophic as first reported. The leak had amplified the damage. Unintentionally, or perhaps too effectively. Victoria seized the opportunity. In a dramatic board meeting, she presented the corrected data, exposing the manipulation that had intensified the crisis. She didn't name Phyllis outright. She didn't have to. Eyes turned. Trust shifted. Daniel watched from the back of the room, torn between loyalty and fear. Phyllis felt the momentum slipping for the first time. Had she pushed too far? Victoria met her gaze across the table. You wanted to turn the city upside down, Victoria said quietly. Congratulations. Phyllis stood slowly. You built an empire on silence and intimidation. And you're tearing it down out of pride. Phyllis's voice cracked slightly. I was tired of being dismissed. And now, Victoria asked. Phyllis hesitated. Because she hadn't expected this, the collateral damage, the uncertainty in Daniel's eyes, the board's mistrust. Revenge had tasted sweet at first, but now it felt complicated. The meeting adjourned with no clear winners. Stock prices stabilized barely. The takeover stalled. The city buzzed with speculation. That evening, Phyllis stood once more overlooking Genoa City. She had shaken it. Forced conversations. Exposed vulnerabilities. But she had also changed something deeper. The Newmans were no longer untouchables. Victoria stood beside a window at the ranch, reflecting too. Phyllis hadn't destroyed them, but she had transformed the landscape. The next war wouldn't be fought the same way. When they met again days later, the tension was different. Quieter, more aware. You didn't win, Victoria said. Phyllis nodded slightly. Neither did you. But everything shifted. Phyllis exhaled, that was the point. Victoria studied her carefully, so what now? Phyllis allowed herself a faint, weary smile, now we see who adapts. As she walked away, it was clear that her ultimate revenge hadn't been about crushing Victoria. It had been about proving she couldn't be erased. And in doing so, she had forced Genoa City to reckon with a new reality. The power structures had cracked. Alliances had shifted. And the next chapter would be written on unstable ground. Phyllis Summers hadn't burned the city down. She had rewritten the rules. Genoa City would never be the same.